On Halloween night, a woman was left alone with her daughter for a short while when her husband ran errands at the store. Upon his return, he encountered a horrific scene, something far beyond anything depicted in horror films. The severity of the incident left some of the responding police officers so shaken they required psychological help. The details of this tragic case were deeply disturbing to everyone involved. Doreen Erbert was born on November 29, 1952, in California. She grew up in a big family with 5 other children. Doreen was a friendly and happy person who always wanted to lend a hand to others. Even in school, she knew she wanted a job helping people. So, after college, she moved to San Francisco and became a physical therapist. Doreen always wanted a big family of her own, and her chance came soon. At 24, she met Michael Venice, who worked in a factory near her clinic. They started dating, and a few months later, they got married. In 1976, they had a son, Paul. Things were good at first, but after the baby arrived, their relationship got worse. Within a year, they decided to split up. Paul stayed with Doreen, and Michael could still see him regularly. They managed to stay on friendly terms. A year later, Doreen met Charles, and they started dating. They got married and decided to move to a quiet neighborhood in San Jose. In 1979, they had a daughter, Diana. Charles, just like Doreen, wanted a big family. He helped raise Paul and was thrilled when their daughter arrived. But disaster struck the family in February 1980. 4-year-old Paul climbed over the fence around the pool and accidentally fell in. Doreen was home, but she didn't see it happen in time. She got him out of the water and called for help. They rushed him to the hospital and put him on machines to keep him alive. Sadly, after 10 days, the doctors said there was no hope. They decided to take him off the machines. Doreen was heartbroken and couldn't stop feeling guilty, even though the police found it wasn't her fault. Despite everything, she kept going, and her little daughter helped her through this terrible time. Finally, some good news came to the family 4 years later. Doreen and Charles had been trying to have another baby for a long time, but unfortunately, she had miscarried twice. Thankfully, she got pregnant again, and this time, everything was going smoothly. They were expecting a baby boy in early November. A few days before Doreen's hospital visit, the family decided to have some Halloween fun. It was Halloween night, October 31st. All the neighbors were in the spirit. Decorations up, candy bowls full, and kids dressed up for trick-or-treating. Diana, their 4-year-old, was itching to join in, and her parents just couldn't say no. Even though Doreen was 9 months pregnant, she took Diana out trick-or-treating while Charles stayed home to hand out candy to the neighborhood kids. They got back home a little before 9 p.m. Charles told Doreen they were running low on candy and planned to zip to the nearest store to grab some more. He wouldn't want to disappoint the neighborhood kids. He left around 8:50 p.m. and was back in about 15 minutes. As he walked up to the house, he noticed the front door was cracked open, which seemed strange, but what he found inside was a horrifying nightmare. When he went in, he saw Doreen on the floor in the hallway, surrounded by a lot of blood. She wasn't moving at all. Charles called 911 right away. Then, he saw something awful in the living room. Their unborn baby, lifeless. He was in complete shock, couldn't believe what he was seeing. For a moment, he thought maybe Doreen had a miscarriage, but then he saw something even worse. There was a human hand next to the baby. Charles instantly knew the hand belonged to Doreen. His heart pounded with the awful understanding that someone had hurt his family. Panic surged through him as he searched for Diana, fearing the worst. The floor was slick with blood, and Charles stumbled as he raced through the house. Thankfully, a small sound led him to Diana. She was huddled behind the couch in the living room, thankfully unharmed. Relief washed over him, but it was quickly replaced by crushing grief. When the ambulance arrived, paramedics found a faint pulse in Doreen and rushed her to the hospital. Tragically, they couldn't save her, and she passed away on the way. Their unborn child also didn't survive. The attacker had not only delivered the baby, but had also inflicted many injuries. Medical professionals examined Doreen's body and determined she had been hit repeatedly with a long, sharp weapon, like a sword or a big knife. The police swarmed the house, which was a terrible mess, like something out of a scary movie. And some of the police officers needed counseling afterwards. Blood was smeared everywhere, on the floor, walls, and even the ceiling. The detectives searched the whole house top to bottom, but they couldn't find the attacker or any signs outside the house that might help them. On the sidewalk, they saw bloody footprints that just stopped in the middle of the street. This made them think the killer probably escaped in a car from that spot. They also found another clue on the front lawn, a bloody wolf mask. Charles told them they didn't own anything like it, so the police figured it might belong to the killer. They sent the mask to the lab for testing and tried to talk to Diana, the only one who saw what happened. Diana was too scared to talk much, but she might still be able to help them catch the bad guy. She told them that after her dad left for the store, someone knocked on the door. Her mom went to answer and saw a man wearing a wolf mask with a long knife. He threatened to kill her, and her mom yelled at Diana to run and hide. Diane hid behind the couch and couldn't remember anything else until her dad found her. Unfortunately, since the attacker was wearing a mask, she couldn't describe him to the police. At first, the police suspected Charles, Doreen's husband. They thought it was strange that his trip to the store happened right when the killer showed up. Doreen was attacked just a few minutes after he left. When Charles came back home, he walked all over the blood, even slipping and getting it on himself. The police wondered if he might have done this on purpose to explain the blood on his clothes, but detectives soon found some things that didn't fit this idea. First, Charles's shoes didn't match the bloody footprints outside. Second, the killer probably got into a car parked near the house, but there was no blood in Charles's car, and he wasn't wearing different shoes. The police went to the store and talked to the person working there. He said Charles did buy candy that night, showing he didn't have time to kill someone. Security cameras at the store also backed up his story. So the police stopped suspecting Charles for a while and asked him if anyone might want to hurt his family. Charles immediately thought of Doreen's ex-husband, Michael. Charles said Michael seemed okay with the divorce at first, but things got bad after their son drowned in the pool. Michael blamed Doreen, thinking she did it on purpose to cut ties with him. He even sued her, trying to make her responsible for their son's death. Even when they were married, Michael acted weird sometimes after their son was born. He'd often get depressed and withdraw from Doreen and the baby. Doreen thought it might be related to something bad that happened to him when he was a child. Michael had trouble hearing since he was a kid, so he always had to wear a big hearing aid. Back then, these things were clunky, and other kids made fun of him for it. All this made Michael shy and withdrawn as he grew up. He didn't have many friends and avoided girls. He seemed to get over these problems when he met Doreen, but they didn't completely go away. This was a big reason why they ended up getting divorced. When Doreen married Charles, Michael started feeling angry and bitter towards her, especially because another man was raising his son. These feelings got even worse after their son died, and Michael ended up really hating his ex-wife. He also lost his job after working there for many years, which added to his problems. After hearing Charles's story, the detectives decided to talk to Michael. While Charles's information wasn't enough to make Michael the main suspect, they decided to visit him right away, since he lived close by, only 2 miles away from Doreen's house. They got to his house around midnight and saw his pickup truck parked near the garage. They used a flashlight to look inside the truck and saw something that looked like blood on the steering wheel and keys. They knocked on the door, but there was no answer. The lights were on, and they could hear water running inside. This made them think Michael might be getting rid of evidence or cleaning clothes with blood on them. So, they kept knocking. Even though the police told Michael about his ex-wife's murder, he stayed calm. He answered all their questions in a relaxed way and even let them search his house without needing a special permit. He said he went shopping earlier, came home, and hadn't left since. Michael even agreed to a paper saying it was okay for them to search. As he went to sign the paper, the officers noticed a bad cut on his right hand. Michael said he cut himself by accident while carving a pumpkin for Halloween, but the police didn't believe him. The cut looked fresh and was still bleeding. In the meantime, some officers started searching his house. Michael went upstairs with one officer who asked to see his ID. When they went into the bedroom, Michael reached for the headboard, but the officer quickly told him to stop. This seemed strange. Why would he hide his ID behind the bed? The officer went over and saw a holster with a loaded gun hanging on the headboard. He took the gun and brought Michael downstairs to the other officers. Meanwhile, Other officers found drops of blood on the floor, leading to a washing machine in the garage. They also found a pile of bloody clothes. This was enough evidence to arrest Michael, so they took him into custody. The detectives and crime scene investigators combed through the house again, looking for anything that might connect Michael to the murder. It would take a few days to get the test results back on the blood samples they collected. In the meantime, they found some very disturbing things. First, they found an empty box for a big machete, the kind with an 18-inch blade. The medical examiner said this type of weapon matched the wounds on Doreen's body exactly. Second, they found 2 crudely made coffins in the house. The detectives worried these were meant for Doreen and her husband. The police also found body bags like the ones doctors use. It was strange that Michael would have these things, and it made the police very suspicious. Based on all this evidence, the police went to court to ask a judge for permission to hold Michael for a longer time. Normally, they could only keep a suspect for a limited period, but the judge didn't think they had enough solid evidence yet. So Michael had to be released, and he walked free. However, 3 days later, the news from the lab came in. They found blood from 2 different people at the crime scene. Tests showed that most of the blood belonged to Doreen, but there was also a small amount that matched Michael's blood type. It seemed like he had gotten hurt during the attack on his ex-wife. The judge quickly signed a warrant to arrest Michael, and he was officially charged with killing his ex-wife and their unborn child. Detectives soon found another clue tying him to the crime. They talked to people who knew Michael and learned he owned the exact same wolf mask found near Doreen's house. He wore it to a party the previous Halloween. The police even found a picture of him wearing the mask. To leave no room for doubt, they also found the same clothes he wore in the picture hidden in his house. But the mask story didn't stop there. To make their case even stronger, the police talked to all of Doreen's neighbors about that night. It turned out that kids trick-or-treating saw a grown man wearing a wolf mask standing across the street from her house, just watching it. Importantly, they saw him around 7 p.m., 2 hours before the murder. Michael's trial started in July 1988, 4 years after the crime. At first, he admitted he did it, but then he changed his mind. He didn't deny killing them, but he said he wasn't guilty because of mental problems. A doctor who examined him agreed that Michael had serious mental issues. Michael told the doctor that seeing other kids happily trick-or-treating on Halloween reminded him of his son Paul's death, and it caused him to lose control. Michael told his side of the story. He said he went to Doreen's house on Halloween night with a machete. When she opened the door, he told her she killed their son and that he planned to kill her. Doreen recognized him despite the mask, screamed at her daughter to run, and Michael attacked her right away. But this part of his story didn't seem believable. Everyone who knew Doreen said there was no way Michael wouldn't have noticed she was pregnant by then. She was quite short, and her friends even joked that she was wider than tall because of her baby bump. The prosecutors argued that Michael knew exactly what he was doing and planned the whole thing. Detectives found out that Michael had told some friends he wanted to kill his ex-wife and her husband, then dump their bodies in the ocean. Considering the coffins and body bags found in his house, the prosecutors believed he planned to follow through, but changed his mind for some reason. Maybe he panicked or worried about getting caught if he stayed too long. Doreen's daughter, Diana, bravely testified at the trial. Even though she was only 9 at the time, she still remembered everything clearly. Charles hated the idea of his daughter having to relive such a horrifying experience, but she was the only one who saw what happened. The trial lasted for a whole year, and in the end, the jury found Michael guilty of killing Doreen and their unborn child. He was sentenced to death, but then California changed its laws and stopped using the death penalty. Because of this, Michael is still in jail today, and it's unlikely he'll be executed anytime soon. Years later, Diana opened up about how this murder had always stayed with her, like a terrible nightmare she couldn't escape. Finally, she decided to try to forgive Michael and move on. She knew that if she didn't, it might drive her crazy. Thanks for watching. What did you think of this story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed it, be sure to give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Your support really means the world to me.